Getting caught out by the VAT man can be a pretty expensive deal, so watch on. As a business accountant, my team and I spend all day long helping business owners on their journey, and unfortunately, at least a few times a year, somebody comes to us saying, do you know what, I've made a mistake, I realise I should have been VAT registered, can you help? And of course we do, and we help them sort that out. And in this video, what I wanted to talk to you about was looking at how to avoid that situation, but actually at the same point, what happens if you do get caught out. Now, before we dive into it, if you like these type of videos, make sure to click the subscribe button below so you get notified whenever we release more just like it. So let's recap briefly then on what the VAT threshold is. So that threshold is basically the limit at which you don't have a choice. You have to go VAT registered. And again, caveat with anything VAT and tax, this is a general thing. There will be the odd occasion where someone will go, oh, well, actually in this situation, and they would be correct. So there are the odd situations where that's the case. But generally, for a general business, when you hit £85,000 worth of sales in a 12-month period, so that's 85 grand of sales, that's the top end, that's the money you get in for everything you sell, you're gonna need to be VAT registered. Now, generally what happens when you hit that limit is they give you 30 days from the end of the month in which you go past it. So that's quite a mouthful. So if you imagine if in December of whatever year you exceeded that threshold, then what would happen is you would actually be registered by the 1st of February. So you might have exceeded it on the 2nd of December, you might have exceeded it on the 30th, it doesn't matter. It's the point is you get 30 days the month after. So exceed it in December, registered by the 1st of February. So that's how the VAT registration work. Now, the biggest thing is to talk about this threshold, is that it's a rolling basis. Now what that means is, if you imagine, let's say you ran your year in line with a tax year, so roughly start in April, end in March. When you get round to the following April, so you've done 12 months, when you get round to the following April, you cut this April off and add this April on, and it moves along with you like that. So the reason they do that is that you can't go, I'm gonna invoice to about 84,000 here, and then I'm just gonna wait, tick over the next day and then invoice a load. It's a rolling thing, so it will catch you. And I think that catches a lot of people out, so just be wary of that. And the key point here is to track that income. You know, you've got to have a feel for how much money is coming in every month or every week, and just keep a track of that and have a feel that, okay, do you know what, I'm approaching the threshold, and make sure you're really on top of that. Because if you don't work with an accountant, or even if you do, but you only see them once a year, say, they're not going to know, no one's going to know, and the last thing you want to do is have to come to the tax man and say, do you know what, I should have been registered. Can we look at this now? Because you do get penalties. So let's talk about what happens then if you do get caught out. I mean, the easiest way, of course, is don't get caught out, track it. And that I can't tell you more times probably in this video that I'm going to mention this word, but track it, track it, track it. Don't get caught out, because you want to plan for it. So if you do end up in a situation where you need to be VAT registered, the biggest thing you can do is make sure you've planned the effect of what's going to happen. I mean, it's an amazing thing, isn't it, that you've been that successful with your business, that you've reached that level. I'm sure when you started out day one, the thought of getting 85 grand from random strangers as new customers would have been exciting to you. So it's a good thing to have. But if you don't plan the pricing and the impact on your business, then you can find yourself in a world of problems. Because if you imagine, forgetting the maths of it, for the majority of businesses, 1/6 of everything that you're getting in, if you did nothing, roughly would disappear, worst case. So if you just took whatever you were getting in the month, divided by 6 on a calculator, that would be the VAT that you're going to hand over. Okay, it's not as simple as that, because you'll be able to offset some of the VAT you're paying out, most probably, to reduce that bill. But you know, that gives you some idea of what would be the case if you didn't change anything on the day you registered. So that's why for many businesses who work direct with Joe Public or the consumer, or you know, non-business to business, try to keep an eye on the VAT threshold and aren't voluntarily registered early, because it's a pricing problem. So just bear that in mind. And there's plenty of videos on the channel where we talk about that in some more detail and how you can look at your pricing. But so let's talk about then, you've done it, you've made a mistake, what can I do? Well, actually the process isn't too bad. You have to fill out some forms, there is a process to follow. Normally I would suggest getting professional help. The reason being is that there are some other cool VAT rules you can do, like it's possible to claim VAT that you've spent previously backwards as well. So if you imagine you were 6 months behind, registering late, and the tax people would say, okay, well I want the last 6 months worth of VAT. So worst case, using that maths I did before, add up what came in, Divide by 6, that's the worst case VAT figure you're going to hold. But there are some cool rules around recovering VAT you've spent before. So you'll be able to knock off things like, you might have a van, for example, you bought relatively in the last couple of years, and things like this that might come into it. And that's where I think if you are registering late, getting a professional to help you out with that is going to make a big difference. We did one recently for a plumber where actually they ended up in a refund situation because there was enough stock on hand and other things that meant that it wasn't too bad. So that could be a surprise. But on top of that, let's just say you did have some money to hand over. There's generally a penalty system. That penalty ranges from effectively 0 to about 30%. I'd say the majority of cases we see, you end up quite often with like a 10% penalty for your lateness, and then there might be some interest charges and things. But if you do it correctly and make sure you offset everything that you're meant to be offsetting, it's not the end of the world. It can be done, and with a professional, they can help you through it as well. Ultimately, the tax people want their money straight away, but at the end of the day, if you haven't got it, you haven't got it, and there's always a way to sort of do a plan with them, even though initially they will ask for it in one go. So that just gives you a feel for the kind of process that's there if you do end up having to register late. But I think the key with all of this is don't register late. Be on top of it, track it. If you've heard of programs like QuickBooks or Xero, keeping things in there is nice because you can just see at a touch of a button where you are. But even a simple spreadsheet, every time you invoice, you can set the spreadsheet up so you can just see where you are on that limit. But the thing that catches people out the most, there's 2 areas I think. So these are the takeaways for the traps for this. Make sure that you're tracking it in a rolling. So every time you go to the next month, take the last month's off in your spreadsheet or whatever you're doing. And also make sure to include everything that you're selling up here. So that includes like if you're using a plumber, for example, because I think that's a very common one. If you're selling boilers and reselling parts, that all counts towards this 85,000 limit. So yes, it might not be your money, but it doesn't matter from the VAT point of view. It's what is the business turning over up here. So, and again, there are caveats. There are things where you might have done some work for, say, America or somewhere like that, where in certain circumstances you wouldn't count that towards your 85,000. So that does happen as well. So check it out if you're in any way concerned. I always think with VAT, it's probably one of the more complex areas. Definitely check in with an accountant to see if they can make sure you get the right advice and guidance around your situation. So that's it. Some takeaways there. Track it. Don't panic if you have gone over, just get it sorted and adjust your pricing. If you've got value from this video, make sure to share it with people you think would benefit, and we'll see you on the next one.